So, yeah, so that's what I'm going to talk about, the Shoresearch method. Going to talk a little bit about what Shoresearch is, and for those of you who are Somerset people, why I think we need to do it in Somerset, which I'll whiz through quickly. Then I'm just going to outline the types of surveys and how to do them. And then finally, again, especially for Somerset people, how you can get further involved if you wish to. Very quickly, in case you don't know, so my name's Mark Ward. I work for Somerset Wildlife Trust, and the project I'm managing is called Somerset's Brilliant Coast. Oh, thank you, Mary. I need to change display settings. Oh, gosh. Okay, I see. Thank you, Mary. So yeah, it's called Somerset's Brilliant Coast. There's 3 parts to it. One part is called Curious Coast, which is all about engaging local people with the coast through walks, workshops, and citizen science projects like Shoresearch and Sea Watch, which is our porpoise watching surveys we do. And I've got funding. Oh, I've got funding up until 2022. Put an extra 2 on there. So I'm hoping to sort of grow this group so it continues, even if we don't get further funding, it becomes a sort of working group in its own right. So what is Shoresearch? So this is where I'm going to come to my second technical fail. Let's see if this works. This is a short video by Cornwall Wildlife Trust, some of you might have seen, which just kind of sets the scene. And I'm going to try not to get Cornwall envy when I'm watching it. Let's see if it works. Is that working? Can people hear the sound? So yeah, that's just a sort of bit of a taste of what it's all about. And I say in Cornwall with their beautiful clear waters, but as we move, especially into Somerset, not so clear, but what we do and what we find is, I think, just as good as we're finding Cornwall. So Shoresearch was set up about 10 years ago, I think, by the Somerset Wildlife Trust, by the Living Seas team at our central team, covering the whole UK. And at the time, the director of Living Seas said that it was a really good project because it allowed people to contribute, make a national effort to be part of marine conservation in action. And I think it's a really good bit of citizen science, which actually produces useful results. It goes on a national database and can actually inform national conservation strategy. So it's really useful stuff that, that you're doing. So in terms of Somerset, why we need to do this. So some of you would have seen some of these slides before, but if you're new to Somerset Shoresearch, it's just a quick whistle-stop tour about why I think we need to do surveys here. So the Somerset coast that we survey starts at Glenthorne on the North Devon border and comes to Port Bay, which is here, and extends right along to Breen Down. But also we are thinking of doing surveys up into North Somerset as well. So just along this bit of coast, why it's so important, well, Porlock Bay itself is amazing. It's where the blue Atlantic waters meet the muddy Bristol Channel waters, and you still get relatively clear water here. And down at Gore Point, you get this amazing boulder shore, which I think is one of the best shores I've seen in the UK. And actually, we have got the only kelp forest in Somerset. We've got a kelp forest there, which is really rich in biodiversity. It's a really rich habitat. And we actually did a Shoresearch walkover survey on the low spring tide back in early April or March, and actually got round to wade around the kelp holdfasts and found lots of great stuff. I think what triggered the Somerset sort of Shoresearch was when we started investigating the Somerset coast, we realised it hadn't been really looked at least since the 1970s, and we found stuff we didn't know was there. So this was found at Porlock, a little sea slug, Edmondsella pedata, which we didn't even know was in Somerset. So we thought it's worth looking further, as well as all the kind of usual species that you get along the coast. The other things we're interested in is looking at things like climate change. So this, again, those of you who are more experienced will know is the common or toothed topshell, Phorcus lineatus, which is a southwestern species right on the edge of its northern range in Britain. But how far up the Bristol Channel does it go? And is it to do with temperature or sea temperature change, or is it to do with silt load? So by surveying all along the coast, we can pick out those changing patterns. And also, of course, all the sort of tidal stuff then is food for things out at sea. And just a quick shout out for my other project, which is Sea Watch. And here's some people at Hurlstone Point at Porlock looking out for porpoises. And there's quite a large resident porpoise population in the Bristol Channel, which we can link into what we're finding, obviously, on the shore as well. Moving further along, we get to Minehead. Interesting stuff here. It's a kind of shingle shore, which is relatively rich. I know some of you came along to a BioBlitz we had here at the beginning of my project, but it's been massively altered by humans. As part of the new sea defences back in 1996, they dumped loads of aggregate sand from the Bristol Channel onto the beach to make it the golden sands of Minehead, but it isn't really. So they've been altering the beach here, and it's interesting to know what impact that might have. And obviously there's butlins and these big rock armour groins, which are all possibly having an effect. And by studying what we find on the shore, we can find out more about what that effect is. There's lots of crabs along the Somerset coast, common ones like the shore crab or green crab, which we find everywhere, but also especially to the western end, we get other species like xantho species, and no one's really kind of looked at their distribution. And the other thing we started spotting early on is the invasive Pacific oyster, which is a real pest in Cornwall and in South Devon. And I know that Coastwise and North Devon have been starting to look at this, so we're also going to be running a parallel project I'll mention at the end. But we've spotted a lot more of these oysters than we thought were originally there. And we did the BioBlitz at the beginning of my project 3 years ago at Minehead. We went back into the Shoresearch there the other week, and I'm pretty sure there's more. And in fact, one of us met the harbour master and told him what we were doing, and he said, yeah, there are more. So how is it spreading? Where are they found? So that's another reason to look out for things, invasive species. We sometimes find things we don't expect. So again, these were found at Minehead. These are the eggs of cuttlefish. So again, although you wouldn't get a cuttlefish in your Quadrat, we can find evidence that they're around along the Somerset coast. Moving along further, we get to the amazing sort of geological features that go from Blue Anchor eastwards, which makes it a regionally important geological site. But on the rocky platform down here, we start to get other interesting stuff. In fact, we get bits of this before this at Minehead. This is the honeycomb reef worm, Sabellaria aviolata, which forms extensions reefs all along the Somerset coast. But how big are those reefs? Are they shrinking? Are they expanding? They can very easily be damaged by treading on them. So, you know, it's an important biodiversity species, but don't know much about it. Again, sort of common stuff like anemones. And one thing we've been noticing is strawberry anemones, and what's the sort of proportion of strawberry anemones versus the common beadlet. Moving further on still, this is Howell Bay, just past Watchet, and you can see the contox in the background there. This is a mixture of mud and then these incredible limestone and shale ledges that go right down to low tide. In fact, this is our next Shoresearch survey on the 29th of May, couple of weeks' time, we're going to go and do our survey down there. Something else you get along this bit of coast at very low tides is the common sunstar, Crossastra. And again, we don't know how common they are, and they only appear at very low tides and immediately get eaten by the seagulls, so we can pick those up. And then you've got your sort of common or garden things like limpets. One thing about Shoresearch is it doesn't ask you to try and identify different species of patella, of common limpets. But again, we might do a sort of parallel project where we do randomly sample a few and take them off the rocks. Because if you look at them on the underside, it's easier to tell the different species apart. But Shoresearch is fairly low level taxonomically. It doesn't ask you to go into huge detail unless you want to. So you can simply record it as patella. Dog whelks as well, all along the coast. And here's some dog whelk eggs that have been laid. This is at Howell. Moving further along, we get to the highlight of the Somerset coast, which is a massive nuclear power station, Hinkley B, with a decommissioned one, Hinkley A, and a brand spanking new one, Hinkley C, which is being constructed as we speak. That's interesting for lots of reasons. I'm funded by EDF, who are the company, so I don't have to be careful what I say, but I'm kind of mindful that they are one of our funders. But to be fair to them, one of the things they've done is they've done quite a lot of mitigation work at the front of the new power station, where they've damaged the shore when they were putting in a temporary jetty, this temporary jetty here, and they broke the ends of the rock pools and all the rock pools were draining. So they've now actually cemented up the ends of the rock pools so they don't drain, and that's to protect this seaweed, coral weed, which is pretty common all along the coast, but they think there might be some other species apart from the common Corallina officinalis, which seem to like little waterfalls between the rock pools. So they have noted that, and they've done some work to kind of mitigate where they can. Moving further along, you get to Stolford, where there's some petrified submerged forest, as well as the rocky shore. And we're starting to get into the muddier bit now, but there's still enough sort of substrate to do Shoresearch on. And one thing just to mention here, which you find all along the coast, is the invasive Australian star barnacle, Ostrominius. And it seems on the Somerset coast, once you get past Minehead, nearly all the barnacles we find are this invasive species. There are no, or very few native species. And again, Shoresearch, you don't have to identify the different species of barnacle, but it's an interesting sub-project that we could do if we wanted to see what's going on there. We also have lots of these chaps, which are boring piddocks, because the rock is so soft in Somerset, the shells and the limestone in particular, piddocks can bore into the rock. And there's quite a few extensive piddock reefs that, again, we haven't really mapped properly that we can pick up. Then we really get into the muddy bit. This is Steart, the Wildfowl and Wetland Trust, as part of Bridgewater Bay National Nature Reserve. And even here on the sort of seaward edge of the marshes, there's a sort of shingle bank and some sort of salt marsh. And there's enough kind of substrate that you could possibly do a Shoresearch survey, although you might want to switch to another version of it, which I'm going to mention, which is a survey for soft shores. And you also get these little things, which are mud snails, really, really common, and a predator on mud snails, which we want to sort of track as well. I just put this in. I went to Steart Marshes the other day to do a sea watch and didn't see any porpoises, but the avocets have arrived for the summer and all the eggs are just hatched. So there was about 15 little tiny avocet chicks running around in the mud, which is really cute. So we are really, this is the mouth of the River Parrett. So this is really now muddy. You can't do a Quadrat survey here, but there's still lots of stuff. And so Shoresearch has been adapted for muddy shores, which I'll mention in a minute. And we did have a go at doing a muddy shore survey at Breen, which was great fun. And we'll probably do a few more. And then you get to the end of our stretch, which is Breen Down, which does have quite extensive rocky shores at low tide around the edge of it. So again, it's like the furthermost limit of extensive rocky shore. And there's a few little headlands further on in North Somerset, which we might have a go at later on. The other thing, just to put into context before I talk about the method, is that in Somerset Wildlife Trust project predecessor to mine was a project funded by the Peter Dehane Charitable Trust. And we had a member of staff who spent 2 years doing a biotope survey of the whole of the Somerset coast. So using GPS and reinforcing that with some Quadrat sampling, she basically mapped all of the different habitat types linked in to the sort of natural England biotope life forms. and that map is now uploaded on our website, so anyone can see it. A more detailed version is available for planners. So it's given us a really good, for the first time for decades really, a proper map of what we've got in Somerset in terms of major habitat types. And what we're doing in Shoresearch is we're going back now to beaches along that overall survey, habitat survey, and doing the more sort of fine-tuned Shoresearch survey on top of it to pick out what's actually there. So the types of surveys that you can do for Shoresearch as part of this national project, as it said in the video, there are 4 types. There's the Walkover survey, the timed species search, the Quadrat survey, and then the box Cora survey, which is a soft shore one. So I'm going to kind of whiz through some of them fairly quickly and then focus on the Quadrat survey, which is the main one we're doing in Somerset. So the Walkover survey is, so I suggest that one way you could do this is if you go to a shore to survey it for Shoresearch, you might want to, if you've got the time and the kind of people power, to start off with a Walkover. And this is a qualitative survey, and all it is basically a presence absence species search. Very straightforward. So all they ask you to do is mark out a survey area. They suggest a maximum of 100 meters by 100 meters, just from a safety point of view, so you can see everyone, but it will really depend on the shore, what you've got there, where there's rocky shore on that beach. Ideally, they kind of say do it in one kind of ecological zone or biotope or whatever. So you might have a big extensive area of sort of middle shore rocky platform, and you might put out your survey area like that, and you just mark it with some buckets or bags. If you've got GPS on a phone or something, then just GPS the 4 corners, and then basically the whole group walk through that area and they record and identify every single species they find in as much detail as they can. If you're not sure what it is, especially if there isn't the kind of group leader or an expert around, then you basically take a photo. We've set up our own kind of WhatsApp group on the shore, so people take photos and add it to the WhatsApp group, and then if necessary, I or one of the other people with a bit more knowledge can check it later. It's important when we upload the data that we've kind of verified it as best we can, really. And the way we've done this, we haven't done this very often, but it's almost like you're walking through the area in a line, like you're doing a police search for missing evidence, and give everyone a kind of a meter strip or a 2 meter strip with COVID to kind of walk along on their own, or perhaps them and someone with a recording sheet in a pair, and really sort of turn over every stone, look at every bit and keep going. If you don't do the whole area, then you can always shorten the area and put new GPS coordinates for where you actually got to. And the suggestion is you might want to limit that search, just because people might become less thorough if you do it for too long, but it's entirely up to you and your group how you do that. And then there's a sheet to fill in, which are all available from the Shoresearch. You can get from Shoresearch. There is a site information sheet, which you have to do whatever survey you do, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then you take the recording sheet for your particular type of survey. So this is the Walkover one. Really simple. You just fill in all the information at the top. On the site sheet, all the GPS coordinates and other factors will be put in. Record a name. We actually try and rank our volunteers in terms of level of experience. It just helps when we're kind of checking the data, really. And it's entirely up to you how you do that, but that's quite a useful thing. And people are always very modest, and they say, oh, I'm only a beginner, and you realise actually they're more than a beginner. I can't remember the levels we use yet, but Isabel can tell you in a minute. And then you simply write down the species present, common name or Latin name, but as long as you've got consistency within your group and you all agree what common names you're using, so communicate all the time. And if you take a photo, put a tick, and then we can match the photos to the species later. So that's the Walkover, which we've done a couple of times. The other kind of thing you could do, which is a bit like a Walkover, is called the timed species search. So this is has been divided to try and collect some useful national information about important particular species. And the Shoresearch team nationally have produced some regional lists, which are basically lists of species that they think are important key species for that part of the country. It's not an exhaustive list of everything, but it's the ones they're interested in from a research point of view. And then they produce basically a set of cards which you can print off and laminate on these different species. And if you did this, you'd set up a sample area, again, mark the corners like with the Walkover, and then you'd say to the group, okay, each person come up to me and I'll give you a card, and you give them or a pair of them a card. So they might, this one, for example, is the snake look anemone, and they just have to look for that one species in that area, everywhere they possibly can, a really thorough search. And they suggest you do a 30-minute time search, but do it in 10-minute slots, so people have a bit of a sort of breather in between. So 10 minutes, stop for a few minutes, another 10 minutes, and then another 10 minutes. And there's some clues. This is the back of the card, so there's clues on the back about where to look for them, so you don't wander aimlessly everywhere, but you maybe focus on the most likely habitats or places on the shore. And there's some key features. We haven't actually done this yet, I must admit. The species that are chosen maybe because they're important regionally, or they might be invasive species, or they might be climate change indicators, so all stuff that could be useful nationally when the data is compiled. So I guess it feels like it's hard to see why you're doing it, because it only becomes relevant when it's set against the whole national database, maybe. But it's quite short, and it's quite a sort of fun thing to do if you've got to find your one species. And again, there's a recording sheet to fill in. Here's the sort of, you could give someone several species to look for. It's entirely up to you, and it's just presence or absence in the 3 10-minute searches. But the one I want to focus on is the Quadrat biodiversity survey, and this is the one we've done maybe in conjunction with the Walkover, but this is mainly what we've been doing. So this is for any hard substrate, shores, rocky, pebble, shingles, bedrock, and this time it's quantitative. So as well as just recording species presence, we're also recording their abundance. Right, this is where I'm going to try again to play a video. This one's a bit longer. Oh.
Hello and welcome to Somerset Wildlife Trust's Shoresearch programme. Shoresearch is a citizen science project that documents the marine life that can be found on our beaches. My name is Isabel Pring and I'm the volunteer coordinator for Somerset. In this video, we are going to look at how to carry out a Quadrat survey. The first thing we need to do is define our survey area. In most cases, this will have already happened when you arrive at a site, and we will go directly to the area. We then need to lay out tape measures and mark the area. The first tape is 10 metres long and runs parallel to the shore. The second tape is 30 metres long and starts at the 5-metre point on the first tape and then runs towards the sea. Due to COVID-19 and the need for social distancing, this setup will already have been completed when you arrive at a survey site. Once the tape measures are in place, we need to complete the survey site information sheet. There are a number of steps in this. First, we need to fill out the general survey details. This includes the location with GPS points taken at the centre of the site, the 15-metre mark on the long tape measure, and the top of the site, both ends and the middle of the short tape measure. It's a good idea to GPS the end of the long tape measure too. We then need to describe the site by circling the appropriate options on the information sheet and documenting the conditions of the day. When describing the cloud cover, we look at the entire area of sky and divide it into 8 sections. We then imagine all the clouds move together and estimate how many eighths of the sky would be filled. We also add a general description of the site. It's a good idea to draw the survey area and mark any special features at the site. We then make a note of any activities going on in the area or features that might affect the shoreline. In this case, that includes boulder revetments protecting the coast, fishing posts in the water, and to the west, Hinkley Point, where a jetty is being built. Finally, we photograph the site, ideally 4 images that show the area around the site and general pictures in the survey area. Again, due to COVID-19, it's likely that much of this will be completed by the survey leader before you arrive. To position the survey quadrats, we use a random number generator for the coordinates and then use the tape measures to work out positions. Once we have a position, we lay the quadrat with the top left corner at the coordinates. Before we survey a quadrat, we place a survey number marker on the quadrat and photograph it, and then take a GPS reading from the centre of the quadrat. To ensure that surveyors can remain socially distanced, this will have been completed in advance, and you will simply go to the quadrat number indicated on the recording sheets in your survey box. We're now ready to start surveying. Volunteers work in pairs to document the marine life found in the quadrat, with one person identifying organisms and the other completing the quadrat survey sheet. In normal circumstances, volunteers can interchange roles and discuss identifications, but whilst social distancing guidelines are in place, the recorder will need to remain 2 metres from the quadrat. Mark Ward from the Wildlife Trust's Somerset's Brilliant Coast project is now going to take us through the process of surveying a quadrat.
Okay, so I'm going to talk you through now how to do a recording in a single quadrat. So this quadrat has been placed in position, and the first thing I'm going to do is to look at the top story, so the top layer of organisms we've got in our quadrat. So I'm going to look inside the quadrat and just see what I can see, and I can see there's plenty of seaweed and things in here. So I'm going to have a look and identify it. So there's one particular species here which I'm going to identify. I know what it is. It's Quadrat, Fucus vesiculosis. And I'm going to look and see how many of the squares the Quadrat takes up. So this is a bit of an estimate by eye, but if you think each square is 4%, so I'm looking in here and I'm seeing there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and maybe some other bits and pieces, so 15. So 15 times 4, that's going to be about 60%. So I'm going to say that's 60% Fucus vesiculosis, and the recorder will record that on the recording sheet. I'll then see if there's any other seaweeds. There might be some underneath which we'll find later, but at the moment I can't see any obvious ones on the surface. They're all the same species. Hold on, looking carefully. There's another species here. It's the egg rack, and I'm looking again, and it just seems to be in this one corner here, so it's taking up about 2 squares. So I'm going to say Ascophyllum nodosum egg rack, 10%. Give our record to record that. Also over here, there's a little tiny bit of sea lettuce, Ulva lactuca. That is not taking up a whole square, so I would say that's about 1% of Ulva lactuca. But you've got to have a really good look to make sure you're not missing anything obvious. As I say, you might find some more seaweeds later on when you lift up the top layer, the top story. Incidentally, if you had complete cover of seaweeds in your quadrat, it could be that if you add up all the percentages, they could come to over 100, because you could have, say, 90% of bladderwrack, and if you moved around a bit, there'd be some egg rack underneath, and you might have 20% of egg rack. So in total, it might make more than 100%. That's okay. So now I've done that, the next I'm going to do is look at the understory, so look and see what's living underneath the covered seaweeds. Now here we mustn't lose our quadrat position, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just find some loose stones. I'm going to mark the corner of the quadrat, so there and there, and then I'm going to flip it that way. So I know now this is the area I'm looking in, and I can actually get my sort of hands and things in here. And now I can move the top story seaweed out of the way. Now as I do it, I'm just going to run my fingers through the seaweed, because sometimes there could be snails and things living on the seaweed, especially a snail called Litrinopus or the flatland pool, which is very well camouflaged. So just making sure I'm not taking anything out of the quadrat area that might be on the seaweeds. Just move them back out of the way. So interestingly, as I moved them, I found another seaweed which was hidden underneath the bladderwrack. This one is Fucus serratus, the sorac. So I just flipped my quadrat back a little bit, and that's taken up about 2 squares. So I'm going to say about 8% cover of Fucus serratus. So you can see how you might miss some things until you start moving them around. Okay, so going back to the understory now, so the understory part of it, there are barnacles all over the place here. So again, I need to flip my quadrat back to do the barnacles. Now barnacles, obviously you need to do it sort of mind's eye. These barnacles are Ostrovinius modestus, the star barnacle. They're all the same species, and I would make sure that that's the case first. And then in my mind's eye, I'm going to sort of try and cluster them into a square. So if you imagine all the barnacles in this square, this whole quadrat, they might fit into one square, I think. There's some on the side of the rocks there, some there. So I'm going to say, again, about 4% cover of the star barnacle. Incidentally, when you're recording, you can use Latin names, or you can use the common names. We can sort of convert those later when we input the data, as long as you're consistent. So I'm just going to move this back again so I can have a closer look. So now I'm looking for other sort of organisms. So the barnacles are done as percentage cover, but any other animals, snails and things, it's a count. Now there are loose stones and things on the bottom here. As long as they're not like embedded in the sediment, you are allowed to move them on the underside. If they don't want to move, then don't force it. Making sure you put them back the same way when you've done so. So on the side of this one here, we've got a little tiny chiton shell. Lots of different species, and for this survey we're just going to call them chiton species. So we've got chiton species 1, so on the understory part of the table you'd record that. So that's where you need to have a really good look around. Bottom of the pool, snails, and then you might find the snails, so the little rough winkle here, Latrinus saxatilis, like one of them. There's another one just wedged down the side here. So Latrinus saxatilis, the rough winkle, 2 of those. I think we record those. There might be limpets, although there aren't any in this particular quadrat. Again, you would count the number of limpets. So when you're sure you've got everything and you've put things back in the right places and turned the stones back the other way, the last thing you do is you now need to make a recording of the substrate type on of your quadrat. So you would decide how many, what percentage there are of boulders, of cobbles, of gravel, of sand. You'll see the categories on your sheet, and they should add up. They should add up to 100% in total. Those when you've covered all your different substrate types, if you're looking down from above. So make an estimate of that. If there's standing water, so in this particular quadrat there is a rock pool, this is standing water. Again, you can use the quadrat as a guide. What percentage of the whole quadrat is standing water? And you still, when you're recording substrates, you're still recording the substrate under the water as well. It's the standing water in the whole quadrat, so here it's about 90%, I would say. So make sure you've also got the quadrat number recorded, and you've got your GPS coordinates, which you've either done yourself or someone would have done for you. You've got the actual random number coordinate for your quadrat, to say the number, which will be on the little crab on the marker by the quadrat. And you've put your name down, your level of experience, the location on the shore, the beach you're actually on, and all the other bits at the top of the sheet. So just double check you've got everything recorded there before you move on. And also timing how long it took for you to do the search. You need a start time and an end time.
At all surveys, there will be an expert on hand that can come and look at your specimens and provide identifications if needed. But if you're not sure what something is, or you find something notable, it's a good idea to photograph it. For organisms that can be moved, use the lid of your survey box and make sure you photograph the top and the bottom. We will also create a WhatsApp Shoresearch group on the day so that you can share marine life images with our experts to get an identification. With the Quadrats completed, your survey sheet will look something like this. You can use common names or Latin names, but it's a good idea to use both to avoid any confusion where Latin names change or where common names are used for more than one organism. Don't forget to complete the end time and to add the experience level of the surveyors at the bottom of the page. I hope this video has provided a refresher on how to complete a Shoresearch Quadrat survey, and I want to thank all of you for staying committed to Shoresearch and being ready to join us for the remainder of the year as we start to survey again.
You're on mute, Mark.
Classic schoolboy error. Yeah, I just came out of it there because I couldn't move the next slide on, so I'll open it again. There's a few more sort of summary slides, but it might be a good chance for people just to ask a few questions. If that video wasn't working for you, if you couldn't hear it, I will share a link with you for Coastwise as well, so you can like watch it at your leisure. And thank you to Isabel for putting that together very professionally. So yeah, any sort of general questions at this stage about that technique you want to ask? Just unmute yourself and shout, basically.
What's an ideal number of surveyors to have on a quadrat? How many?
Per quadrat, we've been working in pairs, but it kind of depends on the expertise level, I guess. If you've got 2 experts, then you just need 2. If there are beginners, then I might put an expert and 2 beginners or something like that. With COVID, we've been having problems because we had to give everyone a separate recording sheet, and they had to kind of one move forward and one move back. But in normal times, you can sort of all like muddle together around the quadrat and help each other out. Yeah. Is the idea.
And how many out on any one occasion?
I don't know. We've again with COVID, it's been restricted, but normally we could have sort of 15 people, 10, 15 people.
Good.
Really lucky.
Yeah, that's helpful.
How many quadrats are you trying to do each time?
Sorry?
How many quadrats do you try and do each time? Is there a
so we usually try and do 12, don't we, Isabel?
Sorry, I was muted and video off. Yes, we
sorry,
normally do 12
sorry. I'm just trying to close this YouTube down and it's not working. Bear with me. I knew this would happen. Stop. Get out of it.
We can't see it. Well, I can't.
Keep talking then while I try and sort it out.
Normally we do 12 quadrats, and usually we will do 2, maybe sometimes we've even managed to do 3 survey areas. So we might get an upper shore, a middle shore, or an upper middle and a lower middle, and maybe even a bit of the lower shore. It just depends on the timings and how many people we have. We sort of set 12 as our minimum number of quadrats for a survey area, and you could potentially do more or less if your numbers were different, but I think it's just worked out for us that it's a good number that enables us to do at least 2 survey areas when we go out quite safely, and often have a bit of time left over either to do a 3rd one, or we have been starting to do walkovers in the remaining time, so that ideally that falls on the lowest tide, so the walkover can be as far down the shore as we can get, which means you pick up more species.
Yeah.
And it's an area that's harder to survey with quadrats because of the time it takes to lay it out and set it up.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Sorry, Isabel, can you just clarify? So you would do 12 quadrats in one survey area, and one survey area may just be a middle shore or an upper shore. Is that right?
Yeah, so a survey area is one set of the tape measures.
Okay.
And so that might be in the upper middle. I guess in certain positions, it might span across both, depending on the shore. Most of our shores, that wouldn't happen.
I think, yeah, just to clarify that, if you look at the sort of standard shore search methods that are available from Shoresearch, I think they designed it not with Somerset shores in mind. So if you have very remiss of them, if you had quite a steep shore, obviously if you put a 10-meter tape parallel to sea and 30 meters down, you'd go the whole length of the shore vertically. So if that is the case, what they suggest you do is you do random stratified sampling. So you might do, you know, sort of 4, however many you want, say 4 quadrats in the upper shore, 4 in the middle, 4 in the lower, all within your 10-meter by 30-meter. In Somerset, that wouldn't work because our beaches are like, you know, 200 meters long horizontally. So what we've decided to do is we actually do a survey and we say, this survey today is Minehead, middle shore. And we just go to the middle shore and we put our 10 by 30 in the middle shore. We could, if we'd have time, do another survey in the upper shore, another in the lower, but those are separate surveys. So there are 2 ways of doing it, but for us, it's easier just to go do a complete survey with a whole separate recording sheet and site sheet for each shore level. But you could do it all as one, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And how stringent are you with placing your quadrats? I mean, obviously, if you've got a really rocky up and down shore, I mean, would you survey a vertical face if it happens to flip down the side of a boulder, or?
Yeah, again, with big boulder shores, yeah, we just like balance I don't think it's that nuanced really. Just
no, okay.
And you can do it on an angle if that's what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to now whilst you were talking, that video seemed to start playing about 4 times. So I did Isabel's voice going on 4 times, like all slightly off sync with each other. I was really panicking. Anyway, I think I've got it back now. So I'll just share my screen again. So yeah, just to sort of very quickly summarize, but as I say, it's all on that video. So you go to the shore, this isn't to scale, a 10-meter tape parallel to the sea, which is the x-axis, a 30-meter tape going down towards the sea, which is your y-axis, and then random number coordinates to randomly and approximately place your quadrat down, and we use 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter gridded quadrats. Then you fill in your site information sheet, which could be done by the leader or could be done collectively, and fill in as much details as you can. We're really lucky because one of our volunteers is a civil engineer and he brings along his own GPS, proper GPS device, but you can obviously do GPS using phones and things if you don't have that. And there he is, here's our GPS civil engineer. So we've got proper GPS. And we do GPS as well as the whole area. We do GPS each quadrat as well. And then each group will have their own survey sheets, and that's what's on the video. So fill in, do your top layer first of all. So your canopy layer, which is basically seaweeds or percentage cover. Move them out of the way, and then do your understory, which is basically everything else. But you might find some more seaweeds, which you then add to the top layer, if that makes sense. So basically top layer should mean seaweed, attached seaweeds. The understory is everything else, whether it's attached or moving. And with those, for the everything else, for seaweeds, barnacles, sponges and mussels, you do percentage cover again, and anything encrusting like a bryozoan or something, everything else you do it as a count. And then remember to kind of fill in what your substrate type is and whether you've got standing water and your surveyor experience level. So according to Shoresearch, that's expert, professional, experience, some experience, or just starting novice. Just very briefly to end up, the box core biodiversity survey is for soft shores. I think we were one of the first trusts to actually try this. It was sort of trialed initially by Hampshire Wildlife Trust in the Solent, but I think when I actually quizzed them, they hadn't done that many themselves. So we're kind of pioneering it in a way. It's exactly the same as the Quadrat survey for hard surfaces. This is just an ID sheet I pulled together for our shore. but basically at the random sample points, you don't put a Quadrat down, but you take a core, and this is just some plastic piping I bought from a hardware store and a mallet, and you bang it into the mud, leave about 15 centimeters at the top, so you've got a known volume of mud. And then you basically push the core out into a tray and start sifting, and they've got sieves and bug pots and things like that to help. We're still refining that. It was much more fun than I thought. I thought people would be put off by doing mud, but when you start looking, it is amazing. The major problem is we have one guy who is a bit of an expert on invertebrates offshores, but the rest of us aren't. So we're kind of learning, and I think the taxonomic level is much less, but we're still collecting some useful data and we get better at it. And of course, for Somerset, especially East Somerset, it's going to be a useful thing to add to the data that we're collecting. So if you want to find out more about what we're doing, so especially those of you who are from Somerset, and again, we can send all this out in an email. Isabel's done a really good blog, which has got all our resources on. It's got a sign up sheet for people to sign up for the surveys. It's got the video I showed you and other training videos on. I did a whole series during lockdown of identification of different groups, which you can watch if you want. And then on the Somerset Wildlife Trust website itself, incredibly hard to find, so I can share the link, is our Shoresearch website page, which has also got all the up and coming surveys and all the training videos on there. So if you do want to get involved, sign up to the Shoresearch volunteer group, which is about administers. So if you give her permission and she's got your email, she will send out regular mailings of the surveys coming up, the training coming up, and any other information. I'll also just do a little plug here that we've got quite a few younger people, which is great in our group, some recent graduates with relevant degrees, and they're quite keen to gain some more scientific experience. So we are setting up some mini research projects alongside or separate from the Shoresearch surveys. And in fact, just before this call, I was using the same Zoom link to talk to one of the guys who's just set up a Pacific oyster survey for the coast. And we decided we're actually probably going to do that at the end of our Shoresearch survey. So once we've done our Quadrat survey, we'll spend another, people who want to stay can spend another sort of 30 minutes, an hour doing the oyster survey. And those of you from Coastwise, it's the same method that we were trained in when I came up to Westford Ho with the guy from the AONB. So it's a Natural England survey, although we're going to measure the length of ours as well to get an idea of kind of ages. And we're also probably going to do a survey on the honeycomb reefs using drones to get some idea of the surface cover of honeycomb reefs, and maybe more surveys down the line. And also we do, and I know Ingrid's here today, we do sea watch surveys, which is porpoise watching surveys, which is part of the same thing. So that's it. That's all I was going to talk about. Oh, there's 3 minutes to go. That's good. But yeah, please fire away with any more questions, either about the survey technique, if you're the Coastwise group wanting to set it up, or if you're new Somerset people, any general questions about the kind of volunteer group or anything like that. Now's your chance.
So Mark, yeah, can I just ask? I mean, sort of going further on Sarah's point about the Quadrats. I guess probably on most of the Somerset shores that you're working on, they're quite low profile, relatively flat. Okay, you've got sequences of ledges and that. So I'm guessing you may not have the sort of problem that you find at some sites in North Devon where you've got
vertical faces,
big sequence of kind of steeply dipping rocks, sequence of ribs and gullies and that. See, I mean,
I know what you mean. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I guess it's a case of you deciding as a group and adapting. I mean, Matt will have a better idea in Cornwall if you drop him a line, because he's probably more likely to have encountered that. I mean, I think we very much are biased in the sense that when we go to shore, we if we're doing just say the middle shore, we'll choose an area of the middle shore which looks doable. We won't choose the the most difficult bit, because it's only snapshots anyway. And I think the most important thing is wherever we choose, we're GPSing it. So when we go back next year, we won't get the same quadrats, but we'll get the same boundaries of the sample area. So we are actually, so it almost doesn't matter. The important thing is we have decided where on that shore we are doing it, because the real information is going to be over time, not as a one-off. Because you already know what's on those shores and you've probably done your sort of normal surveys there, but this is more of a long-term project really. So you're deciding on areas of shore you are going to use as your standard bit of that shore, and then you go back to it every year. I think that's probably the most important bit. Then rather than trying to think, I want to make sure I represent this whole shore properly, you know, it's like choose some areas of shore which are surveyable. That won't get around the problem completely, I know, but you could make life easier for yourself in terms of the bit you choose, the 10 by 30 bit you choose. But I don't know what you do if you've got a big ravine and your random number is right on the edge of the ravine.
Coral has suggested we have a lot of latitude over how we do it, because one of our members, Pip Jollens, is very experienced at operating shore theme with us over 12 years, and she knows that our members are not very happy about scrambling over rocks and slippery seaweed and with unknown entities underneath that seaweed. So.
Yeah, I mean, another thing to think about, I guess, is if you have a relatively standard shore, which topographically isn't too challenging, and most of your quadrats are going to be doable and relatively flat when you put them down, that's where I would do a quadrat survey. But if you wanted to get a sort of broader idea of what's on that shore, you do a walkover. Because if you're doing a walkover, it doesn't matter. You can get right into the ravines and the overhangs, and the whole point of it is you're doing that forensics. So it's probably a walkover on a kind of larger area, and then within there, on a manageable area, you do your quadrat survey. Might be a suggestion.
Good idea.
Yeah.
How many sites are you doing? I mean, are you like doing one site lots of times, or are you doing lots of sites once each year, or?
So obviously we've only just started, and we were slightly hampered by the minor inconvenience of a global pandemic, but we have already done, looking at Isabel, 8, I can't remember how many shores we've done, but I think the idea is that there would probably be about, I don't know, 12 sites along the Somerset coast, which we will go back to. But at the moment, we haven't done the first round, if you know what I mean. We haven't done them all once. So the idea would be that over a kind of, I don't know, 1 or 2 year cycle, we would start going back to the same shores again, and then it will start to get interesting, I guess. We start picking things out.
We do also have a couple of places like Minehead where it's split up, and we have Minehead East and Minehead West, where the habitat is quite different, and we expect we might see different things. But yeah, I think we did about 5 locations last time, and within those locations we would have 2 survey areas done. But I think this year we are going back. We're certainly going back to some we did last year. I'm not sure whether we're actually getting 2 at the same location this year. I think not, actually.
But I think that would be my, it's like you don't try and survey the whole North Devon coast. You have your, specific Shoresearch sites which you are accessible and easily surveyed, and you go back regularly to them, rather than doing 50. Do 12 and do them regularly or something would be my suggestion. I think that's
chosen 3 at the moment, so perhaps we're being a bit under what's the word? Not
ambitious enough.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah.
I mean, start with 3, and I think you can always add, can't you? So I mean, for us with our massive shores, that there's potentially, I don't know, 12 places, but within those places, there's, like we said, there's probably maybe three sample areas within those places. It's going to take us a long time to get through all of those, unless we suddenly have 100 people joining the group and we do them every weekend. But again, you can't really, because of tides, and weather, you're going to be restricted. They're relatively narrow.
And we haven't got any paid staff helping us, have we? So it's entirely up to us. So we've got to do just what our volunteers.
No, I was just interested to know whether whether going back to the same place twice in a year is one way of doing it, or which is what
I would do in a year. I wouldn't
Two
replicate
different
within a year. I'd get some beaches done and then go back the following year.
Would you keep to the same time for each beach so that you know,
I guess
get that pattern as well?
Ideally,
if at May you go to one, and then in June you go to the other one.
Ideally, but I think, you know, you can only do what you can do, really. Can I just ask, because again, I'm aware that there are people here who aren't from North Devon coastwise. Great to chat to you. But is there anyone who is new to the Somerset group that just wants to ask any questions about going forward? Don't be daunted by the sort of some of the discussions we've had. When we go out, and again, this is true for coastwise, I guess, we usually have a mix of maybe 3 or 4 experts or semi-experts, and the rest are novices. And I think they find it, there's plenty of support on site. You'll be paired with people who know what they're doing, and you might do 4 or 5 before you actually are able to identify different winkles, but it doesn't matter because we're there to kind of help you through it. So I think it's a really good way of building people's confidence up around ID as well, just by repetition, really. And again, we've got the supporting ID videos that they can look at in spare time. So it's all there to support you, and it's great fun. And socially, I think it's a really nice thing to do. And I think, you know, you're like counting all the common things, and then you'll find something really amazing as well. And then all the methodology breaks down, everyone gets really excited and crowds around to look at the eel that we found the other day, which was really good, for instance, in a rock pool. Yeah, so and yeah, 3-bearded rockling we had in the so yeah, we've got all that fun side still, as well as collecting quantitative data, which is useful to the Wildlife Trust and Natural England. So great.
Yeah, you're
sorry, Ingrid. Sorry, Ingrid. Sorry.
I just wanted to say, as you know, I did my first one at last in Minehead the other day, and it was cold and windy and awful weather, and I loved every minute. It was great. I can't wait to get out again. It was fantastic.
Great.
It was nice meeting new people. And great.
Glad you enjoyed it. And all the others, of course, will be brilliant and sunny and lovely. So if you okay, any sort of final questions before we wrap up, because I know we've overrun slightly.
Yeah, but yeah, can I just ask one thing? I'd just say that to start with, I mean, one of your great advantages is you're well established. You've got a group that you've built and has been working even through kind of the parts of the COVID period and that. So you you've got that developing expertise there. Just one bit on the survey and the survey areas. Are you just broadly in terms of the area of the shore? Are you just broadly taking, say, an upper shore, a middle shore, a lower shore area, rather than sort of specifically? Yeah,
we're not trying to work out. No, we're not trying to work out tidal heights or anything, and the Shoresearch method doesn't expect you to do that. And I think that's why on shores which aren't so big as Somerset shores, your survey would be the whole shore from top to bottom. I think that's the idea. So you're not having to do that. But I mean, no, I'm just doing it from my knowledge of where the middle shore is based on brown seaweeds and things like that. So, but again, the important thing is not that it's the middle shore, but we've GPS'd it, and that's where it is on that beach. Yeah. And at a later date, we could always work out the actual tidal heights anyway, if we wanted to.
Yeah. But so I mean, it sounds like you're just utilising those broad shore zones rather than specific biotopes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Super. And just the final thing to say, which I forgot, is that the Shoresearch kind of team nationally, there is a database, which is the other side of it, not to talk about now. I think if you want help with the database, talk to me separately or Isabel. It's not the most user-friendly database in the world, so it's probably best to do it with someone who's done it before to talk you through it. Isabel's done a sort of great job, but they are looking at making it simpler. But linked to that, they're hopefully going to be launching, hopefully this summer, an app. So you can actually have it on your phone and you can record the data as you go on the phone. I'm a bit dubious about apps because I've tried to use them before in previous employment, and looking at phone screens in the sunshine is not ideal. But I think the idea behind it is they want to encourage more and more people to do this, not just in an organised group, but on their own, especially walkovers, where all you need to do is, you know, sort of set up a rough area and walk through and identify, with the app, which has got the species already on there and stuff. So I think a long-term aim for us is to do our standard group surveys, but also as people become more and more confident, and encourage them to just go back whenever they want and do a walkover. And that will be another way of like building up the data. So that's again a long.
Okay, great.
Okay, right. I'm gonna wrap it up there if that's okay with people. So thanks everyone for coming. And hopefully we might have a few new recruits to Somerset Shoresearch after Ingrid's amazing promotion of how great it is. So as I say, the next one is on the 29th of May at Halwell Bay, which is just to the west of Watchet. So we can walk out to it from the main town in Watchet. And we're starting at midday. I'm going to tack a Pacific Oyster survey on to the end of it. And if you go to our website or the blog, there are some other dates all lined up ready for us for the rest of the kind of summer and autumn. I think there's only one more training Zoom, which is on, I want to say the 9th of June, fairly soon, which is another one of the ID series I've been doing. And this time I'm going to look at snails. Again, Coastwise very welcome to join that one as well. Okay, guys, so enjoy the rest of your evening and see you one or the other. And Coastwise, do get in touch. I know Coral's helping, but I'm more than happy to come across if I'm free. And if I'm in North Devon at that time, so do shout. Okay, so take care, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Very much.
Thanks, Mark and other peeps. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.